The Royal Flush, 1, written by the young author idollybellmarie, more commonly known as Tjournie Wallace. Audio created by Speechify. Narrated by Nara. When I looked out of the airplane window, watching Newark getting smaller as we got higher into the sky, it ripped something out of my body, but ignited me in the same breath. Once I was finally away, the doubt and despair began to fade, and excitement replaced it. The beautiful views of Las Vegas in the daytime only made my eagerness to be here higher. With its glitzy buildings, colorful signs, and billboards scattering the streets, and the diverse set of people that roamed every inch of the city. Maybe this place would be a nice fit for me. I always appreciated a good night out, a fun time, or a nice bar. I was letting my fear of leaving everything behind stop me from seeing the potential that this place could give me. I would not let my doubts or my mother's words get in my way. I needed to give this place a chance, and by doing that, I had to let go, even if it was for a night. But before I do that, we had to finish moving these damn boxes. It had been 3 days since we landed, and the movers finally arrived with the truck full of our things. Was that the last one? I yelled out before wiping the pool of sweat from my forehead and shaking my hand off onto the concrete. I squinted my eyes, trying to see Landon past the blurring sun behind the moving truck. "I think it was," he replied, and I let out a groan of relief. I turned to the mover standing at the side door of the apartment building. "All the boxes are upstairs, thank you so much," I told him as he walked toward me. "No problem, ma'am. Anything for Mr. Goldovo?" His sentence made my eyebrow tick up in skepticism, but before I could say anything more, he was already in the moving truck and pulling out of the parking lot. Landon jogged over to me and ran a hand through his hair before speaking. "I am so glad that is over. You offered to help. They told you that they had it handled," I pointed out, but he just huffed in response. We went into the modern and minimalist lobby, turning the corner to the hall of elevators. That was better than standing on the sidelines and doing nothing, he joked as I clicked the button to the elevator. We stepped inside and I nudged his shoulder. "If you must know, I lifted 2 boxes earlier." "Oh, 2 boxes? That is such an effort, Nara, really," he quipped, just as the door opened to our floor. We walked into the apartment with different-sized boxes scattered across the dark and wooden floors. A full white kitchen with brand-new marble countertops that had to be expensive. A bathroom stocked with towels and toiletries to the brim. And rooms that were bigger than my entire apartment and closets the size of my old bedroom alone. "How hard were you working for him to do all of this?" Landon asked with crossed arms and a weary expression, probably from helping the movers. "I don't know, but I'm not complaining," I snicker, making him let out a low chuckle before walking across the hall. "And he gave me my own apartment? I could kiss him right now." He laughed, and I gave him a do not say that look. Landon wasn't loud about it, but he didn't really care about gender or sexuality. He liked what he liked. I guess my mother's neglect was why he never told anyone but me and his close friends, and I wished we were not shunned because, maybe, it would have been something he was more open and honest about. I did him the favor of not talking about it unless he brought it up, and even though he did not say it, I knew it was something that I appreciated. After looking around the place in awe, we spent about 4 hours ruffling through the boxes, trying to get all of the bigger things built back up, and starting on some of the new furniture we had ordered to the house. "Nara, you cannot force the screw into a hole that it does not go into," he scolded, taking the screw and couch piece out of my hand and doing it himself. "Why did you ask me to help you assemble things if you are going to do it all yourself?" "Because I thought that you'd read the instructions and do it right," he said with an eye roll, and I stood from the floor, walking into the kitchen. "Where are you going?" He called out with his arms held up in the air, and I turned to face him with a grimace. "I'm getting something to drink, which is better than listening to you yell at me." I huffed before opening the fridge that only had leftovers from our takeout and bottles of water inside. Then, just as I put the bottle to my lips, a striking idea popped into my head. I walk back into the living room with a mischievous smile that Landon picks up on in seconds. "What are you up to, Nara?" "Well, while we were waiting in the airport, I was looking at some bars, and he stopped me before I could finish and stood from the floor, dusting off his legs." No, absolutely not," he snapped, waving his hand around. "I'm 22, Landon. You can't control me," I warned, following him before he could close the door. "Oh, I know that I can't control you. I knew that when you booked it to Jersey Shore with Raven when you were 19, But now we are not at home and I am the only person that you know in this city, so you are not going. So what? You are going to keep me confined to the house and never let me out? I ask, my voice laced with sarcasm, but he nods his head seriously. That sounds like a fantastic idea, now that I think about it. Land an exclamation, I yelled, and he responded with a hum. I am not joking right now. Neither am I. You do not know if it is safe, and until I get a good feeling about the neighborhood, you are staying in the house. His voice went frigid, and it reminded me of how he spoke when I showed up late to his art show. Silence swells the room, and I let my lips form a pout that makes him smack his. Fine, he grunted, and a smile found its place on my face. I clasped my hands together with joy, but he points at me, making me drop them to my side. But I am coming with you, he added, and I let out a long groan, reaching up to touch my forehead. Buzzkill, you are going to ruin it. I complain, but his stoic expression does not budge. How? You will not even know I'm there. Even God knew that was a lie. Because I cannot dance and be free knowing that my idiot brother is there. That is why. He lets out a long groan followed by a lip smack. Either I go with you or you are not going. Fine, I say, leaving his room and going into my own. Come with me, why do not you? I said under my breath. We built our beds and dressers, so I had enough in my room to get ready properly. I had some of my dressing clothes in my carry-on, since I knew I wanted to go somewhere when I got here. I pulled out this black dress with thin straps and a ruffled bottom, pairing it with black heels after a much-needed shower, and straightened my hair. I did not bother wearing any makeup since I had on eyelashes already, so just some lip gloss would do the job. I went into the bathroom, checking my hair, and making sure I looked nice before walking into the kitchen. Landon, dressed in a black button-down and dress shoes to match, turned to me with a frown. Are you ready? He asked me, looking me up and down when he saw my outfit. Yes, I am. Is there a problem? Nothing, he blurts out, while walking around the kitchen counter and toward the front door. No, you thought something. What was it? I pry, and he sucked in a deep breath. Just be glad that I can fight, he scolded before opening the front door and allowing me to walk out first. Thank you, kind sir, I joke, and he smacks the back of my head, making me bicker at him until we reached the elevator. You need to stop this abusive behavior, seriously. I yelled, but he dismissed me with his hand while laughing at me under his breath. Here is the text to convert. We made it to the bar that I told him about, and he walked around to the passenger's side of the car to open my door. I step out and we head to the side of the building, where a somewhat long line filed along the wall. Hey, gorgeous in the black. Wait, why the hell was he looking up ? I am talking to you, sweetheart, he said, pointing in my direction, making me raise my eyebrows. I glanced down at Landon's balled fists, and his eyes tick up at me, gesturing me to start walking. We get to the front, earning some rightful groans from the people still in line, and he stamps our hands with a colorful version of the club's logo. We walk into the mildly loud room that was barely lit. Candles were set along the counters and along the windowsills, and people were scattered around, talking with drinks in their hands. There was a small stage toward the front of the room, with what looked like a jazz band playing live music, as the small clusters of people around the bar danced calmly, engulfed into the rhythm of the drums and the smooth sound of a blended trumpet and saxophone. I smiled to myself a little at the sight. This was my type of vibe, like they peeped into my brain and spit out my fantasies of a good night out. Landon looked blankly around the room, snapping back to reality after I tapped his shoulder. Are you going to get a drink? I asked him, holding one of the small drink menus in my hand. Probably not, since I have to drive. I flipped through the small book, seeing something with peach and passion fruit that was intriguing. I called the bartender over, who was a young guy with a pale face. Excuse me, can I have a Cocobana, please? I asked, and he stared me down with wide eyes, and his chest rises and falls before he hurries away. Are you all right? I try to ask him, but he is too far to be in earshot. I look at Landon, who looks like he is about to burst into laughter. What was wrong with him? I asked, shaking my head in disappointment. But I squinted my eyes at my brother when he lets out a belt of laughter. He just got a boner, he said, stuffing his face in his hands, and I slapped his shoulder while looking around to see if anyone heard him. That is insane. I'm not wearing anything revealing. He gives me a weird look. Your opinion doesn't count. Everything looks revealing to an older brother? I argue, and he shrugs his shoulders. If that is what you want to tell yourself, sis. The bartender came back with my drink, and Landon decided not to get anything for himself. I took a sip, immediately loving the citrus flavor mixed with alcohol. Landon stood from the stool and fixed his shirt. "Where are you going?" I asked, looking up at him. "The bathroom, stay here." "Yes, sir," I said jokingly, waving him off. My eyes wandered around the room while I sipped my drink, until my attention reverted to a man that walked through the entrance with 3 other guys behind him. It was like his presence captured me, because I could not help but peer at him when he came into view. He was tall and handsome, with dark forest green eyes that looked nearly black in the dim light. He had a sharp jaw, covered in a thin layer of stubble that was cut perfectly around his lips. Straight and thin light brown hair covered his head that was slicked back to perfection and cut on the sides. Muscles bulged through his dress suit, which was clearly tailored to his large body. I flushed away the sinful thoughts that tried to creep into my mind about the stranger, and turned away from him. It wasn't long before I finished it and was waiting for the bartender to turn around so I could order another. I glanced beside me, flinching at the sight of the man I was admiring earlier taking a seat, looking in the other direction. His posture, his large frame somewhat blocked my view and I could not see past him, so I tapped his arm. He turned around just as I grimaced at how strong his arm was, and his stare captured my entire face. "And you are ?" he asked, raising his eyebrows lightly. "Someone who's trying to see the bartender." I responded, looking past him, but failing again. I figured not engaging in too much conversation would be better, since his presence made goosebumps emerge from my skin and hairs on the back of my neck to stand. "And what is that someone's name?" His voice was smoother than silk and just low enough for me to hear. "Nara," I said blankly, trying not to let my eyes meet his, because if they did, then I probably wouldn't look away. I finally see the bartender, and I waved him over. Once he approaches us, he looks at the stranger like he has seen a ghost, and his lips sputter trying to form a greeting sentence. I try to spare him the embarrassment by speaking first. "Can I have a dash?" I began to say, but the man beside me stopped me from speaking. "I'll have a glass of 1942 cold, and she'll have another one of those," he said, pointing to my empty glass, and the young boy nodded and glanced at me nervously before walking away. My words hitched in my throat, and he just smiled at me, which seemed more uniform than genuine. When I finally looked at him, he gazed back at me as if hearing my name unlocked something in his mind, as if he knew exactly who I was. An intense and assessing stare, like he was trying to figure out everything running through my mind. "You didn't have to buy me anything, but thank you," I said. "It is no problem," he dismissed. Even though I turned forward facing the bar, I felt his eyes on me still. "You are new, are not you?" he asked. "New to what dash?" "New to Vegas," he added, "and the bartender comes back with the drinks 3 times quicker than he made mine, that's for sure. Why are you assuming that I am new to Vegas?" I pull the drink closer, taking a lengthy sip that makes the side of his mouth tick up. "Because it's been about 3 minutes and you haven't said anything," he points out, raising confusion in me. "What do you mean, Dash, I've spoken to you?" "Do you know my name?" he asked, and my mind tried to grasp onto the point of this, but it failed. "Am I supposed to know your name?" "Most do," he replied, and he sounds quite calm and collected for itself to be something to do self-centered. "I'm not most people then, I guess," I responded, taking a sip from the drink, and his eyes never left mine. "You sure are not?" "And what does that mean?" I asked, crossing my arms, but he brushes over my question. "If you are new, then you may learn quickly. Things have a way of falling into place here, whether you want it to or not." My eyebrow raised at his statement, and I bookmarked it for another time. What exactly did he mean by that? Things fall into place? Before I could reply, his eyes peered up at someone behind me, and I turned around to see Landon, standing dead behind me with his eyes wide and his lips parted. The man does not turn around to face him, but I can see a hint of amusement in his expression. "What is wrong with you?" I asked, putting a hand on his wrist, but he only pulls me off the bench and off to the side, where we were out of view. "Why are you ripping me away like that?" I was completely fine, and you are being overprotective for no dash. He stops me from talking, which only makes me grow more annoyed. "Do you know who that is?" he asked frantically. "Is anyone going to tell me, or are you all just going to keep asking, do I know?" "I clearly do not know Landon!" I yelled, but quiet enough, so we did not draw attention to our corner period. "He's a fucking billionaire. His family is rich, and he was talking to you?" "Just like that?" he asked, almost shocked that I, out of all people, drew his attention. I mean, I guess he was. "I am not really seeing the issue here. You do not understand. His family owns like 80% of Las Vegas." His voice goes higher than I am used to, and I nearly want to laugh at him. I peered back at the bar, seeing that he was still there, occasionally sipping on his drink. I do not care about his money. You, out of all people, should know that. Money never excited me, nor did status. I would choose a small-town guy, working in a bookstore before I went after a billionaire, or fed their ego any more than it already was. Do you know who the Thorne family is? His hands cling to my shoulders, and I squint my eyes trying to connect that name to something, and the faint memory of some family on television popped into my mind. Vaguely. Why? He is the oldest son, Ace Thorne. Apparently he owns most of their businesses and casinos down here. And he is talking to you? He said, switching his eyes in between mine. Why do you keep repeating that, like I am ugly or something? And why are you gripping my shoulders so very hard? I finally break free from his grasp, and I look at my shoulders to see the red marks he left, then looking up at him. Shit, I'm sorry, I got excited. He huffed, and I tell him it's all right. Look, I will be careful or whatever, all right? He looked at me worriedly, but ultimately nodded his head and let me pass by. Ace was still sitting at the bar, finishing his glass, and his eyes meet mine as I plant down on the stool beside him. So Dash Ace, I said to him, and he gives me a small smile, seeming more real than the last one, Dash, but still oddly robotic. I see you found out my name, he said, and I rolled my eyes. I did, but it does not change anything. Whatever you have does not impress me, I said, and his expression slightly dropped with part disappointment and part shock and intrigue. And yes, I said, making his eyebrow tick up. Yes, I am new. Thank you for listening to the first book of the Royal Flush Saga, written by iDolly Belle Marie. For more, follow IDBM Writes on Instagram.